Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload, and you'll never miss a story again. Imagine throwing a 40th birthday party for your wife, surrounded by family, thinking it's a celebration of love, only to discover it's the stage for your ultimate humiliation. In front of everyone, I exposed her affair, and her mother responded by throwing hot coffee in my face, laughing, "She has cancer, let her enjoy a real man." The room erupted with laughter, but I wasn't done. I pulled out DNA results proving none of our kids were mine and told her to take them and leave. She thought that was the end, until the very next morning when she showed up begging me for $20K. What happened next wasn't just payback. It was something she would remember every single day for the rest of her life. I'd been planning my wife's 40th birthday for months. We'd been together nearly 18 years, married for 15 of them, and despite the usual ups and downs of marriage, I thought I was doing everything I could to make her feel loved and appreciated. She'd mentioned a few times how she wanted something special for this milestone, not just a cake at home or dinner at a restaurant, but an actual gathering with friends and family. So I booked a private room at her favorite Italian place. I coordinated with the staff to have her favorite wine stocked, arranged the seating chart so she'd be surrounded by her closest friends, and even made a slideshow of photos from throughout her life, from her awkward teenage years to our wedding day to vacations with the kids. Everything seemed set for a night she'd remember forever. Unfortunately, it was, just not in the way I'd hoped. A month before her birthday, I noticed something strange. She started guarding her phone like it was a government secret. Before, she'd casually leave it on the counter while cooking or in the living room while grabbing laundry. Now it was always in her pocket or face down, locked within reach. When I asked her about it once, half-jokingly, she laughed it off. "Work's been crazy. Don't want the kids grabbing it and deleting something important." Sounded reasonable enough, but the tone was too light, like it was rehearsed. 2 weeks before her party, I accidentally saw a message pop up when her phone buzzed on the couch. It was from someone named Terry G. The preview read, "Can't wait to see you again. Same hotel?" I wish I could say I calmly asked her about it, but I didn't. Instead, I memorized the name and number, and that night, while she was asleep, I dug deeper. The call logs, the late-night messages, the calendar entries marked with vague meetings. It all painted a picture I didn't want to believe. I hired a private investigator the next morning. By the end of the week, I had photos. My wife, the woman I'd built a life with, holding hands with a man at a downtown cafe, getting into his car, entering a hotel with him, and emerging hours later. The PI's report confirmed what I already knew. The man was Terry Gibson, a personal trainer she'd met at the gym 6 months earlier. Single, mid-40s, and apparently proud of his reputation for keeping clients happy. For a few days, I was torn between confronting her right away or waiting. The petty part of me wanted to blow up her phone with the pictures and end it on the spot. But another part, the colder, calculating side, realized that if I played my cards right, I could make sure the truth came out in front of everyone she cared about. I started planning. On the night of her birthday, I arrived at the restaurant early, handed the manager an envelope, and explained the order of the evening. He gave me a hesitant look but agreed to follow through. Friends and family trickled in, her parents, my parents, our kids, her co-workers. My wife arrived last, wearing a new red dress and the kind of smile I hadn't seen in months. She hugged me, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Thank you for doing all this." I smiled back, but it didn't reach my eyes. Dinner went as expected at first. People chatted. The wine flowed. The food came out. At one point, her mom, Linda, leaned over to me and said, "You've really outdone yourself. She deserves this." I forced a polite nod. After the main course, I stood up to give a short speech. I talked about her life, her accomplishments, how proud I was of the woman she'd become. Then I gestured toward the screen at the far end of the room, and the slideshow began. The first few minutes were sweet. Childhood photos, graduation day, our wedding, the birth of our kids. People were smiling, some tearing up. Then the images shifted. The photos the PI had taken appeared one by one. My wife holding hands with Terry. My wife kissing him outside a hotel. My wife with her wedding ring on, leaning against him in a restaurant booth. The room went silent. Forks froze mid-air. Someone coughed awkwardly. My wife's face went pale, then red. "What the hell is this?" she hissed at me. Before I could answer, her mother shot up from her chair, grabbed the coffee cup in front of her, and threw it straight into my face. It was hot, not boiling, but enough to sting. "She has cancer," Linda shouted. "Let her enjoy a real man." There was a beat of stunned silence. Then, unbelievably, a few people actually laughed. Not the whole room, but enough to make my stomach turn. I wiped my face, looked around at the people I thought were my family, and pulled a second envelope from my jacket. Inside were DNA test results, not from some random lab, but from one of the most reputable clinics in the state. Tests I'd had done months earlier after noticing certain inconsistencies in our kids' features and timelines. I handed them to my wife and said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Take them and leave." Her hands shook as she opened them. The color drained from her face again. Both kids, not biologically mine. Gasps, whispers. Someone's fork clattered onto their plate. I didn't wait for an explanation. I turned to the manager, thanked him for his help, and walked out. By the time I got home, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Calls from her, her mother, her sister, even her father. I ignored them all. The next morning, she showed up at my door, eyes swollen from crying. Her first words weren't, "I'm sorry" or "let's talk." They were, "I need $20,000. That was when I realized the real game had just begun. When I opened the door that morning, I was expecting a storm, screaming, accusations, maybe her throwing things. But instead, she stood there looking small. Her hair was messy, her face puffy from crying, wearing the same dress from the night before, under a wrinkled jacket. "I need $20,000, she blurted out before I could even say a word. For a moment, I just stared at her. "No, I'm sorry. No, I need to explain. Just a number." I stepped aside so she could come in, partly to avoid making a scene in front of the neighbors, partly because I wanted to hear whatever ridiculous story she had prepared. She walked in like she still lived there, which annoyed me instantly. She sat on the couch, hands fidgeting. "It's complicated," she started. "I have medical bills and some debts." I cut her off. "Your mom said you had cancer." She winced. I don't. She thought saying that would make you back off last night. It was stupid. But I really do have bills." I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "And you think I'm just going to hand you $20,000 after last night?" Her eyes filled with tears again. "We've been together for so long. We have kids together." I let that hang in the air for a moment before saying slowly, "We had kids together. Turns out they're not mine. You made sure of that." She swallowed hard, looking down. "I know. I didn't mean for it to happen that way. It was complicated." "Stop saying complicated," I snapped. "You made choices, over and over again. And now you're here because those choices caught up with you." She bit her lip, probably deciding whether to play the victim or go for anger. She went with victim. "Terry left. He's not answering my calls. And my mom. She's furious, but she can't help me. Please, I just need this money to get back on my feet. You're the only one I can trust." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You trusted me enough to hide an affair and 2 kids that aren't mine. But now I'm the only one you can trust?" That's when I realized she didn't come here because she thought I still cared. She came because she thought I was weak. I decided in that moment that I wasn't going to just say no. I was going to make this hurt in a way she didn't see coming. I told her, "All right, I'll think about it. But I want you to explain everything. No lies. Start from the beginning. I want dates, names, the whole story." She hesitated, but desperation has a way of loosening lips. Over the next hour, she told me more than I expected. How she met Terry at the gym. How it just happened. How it wasn't just him. There had been others over the years. The timelines made my stomach twist, especially when I realized one of the affairs overlapped with when she was pregnant with our second child. By the end, I wasn't even angry. I was cold, done. And I had more ammunition than I'd ever planned to have. When she finished, I stood up and said, "Give me a couple of days. I'll get back to you about the money." She left, looking relieved, thinking she'd won. The next step was easy. I called my lawyer. I'd already texted him the night before about filing for divorce, but now I told him everything she'd confessed. He agreed it was worth documenting, so I wrote out a detailed account of what she'd said, signed it, and had it notarized. Then I called my bank and froze all joint accounts. I changed passwords on everything: online banking, email, utilities. I even called the car insurance company to make sure she couldn't claim anything without my approval. 2 days later, I called her. "Meet me at the cafe downtown, 3 p.m. She showed up exactly on time, clearly expecting an envelope of cash. I slid a manila folder across the table instead. "What's this?" she asked. "Papers," I said. "Everything you need to officially leave my life. Divorce papers, a property settlement proposal, custody disclaimers. Since you already made sure they're not my kids. Sign them and I might consider a one-time payment to help you relocate." Her face went red. "This is blackmail." "No," I said calmly. "This is me giving you a chance to walk away quietly instead of dragging your name through court. You've already humiliated me in front of family and friends. I think this is fair." She flipped through the papers, her hands trembling. "You can't do this. My mom will—" "Your mom threw coffee in my face and called me less than a man. I don't care what she thinks." She slammed the folder shut and stood. "I'll get a lawyer." I smiled. "Good. Mine's better." For the next 2 weeks, she tried everything. Angry texts, tearful voicemails, showing up at my work pretending it was an emergency. I ignored it all. Meanwhile, my lawyer moved fast. We filed first, which gave us the advantage. The DNA results meant I had zero legal obligation for child support, and since most of our assets were in my name, a choice I'd made years ago for tax reasons, she didn't have much to claim. Her $20,000 request turned into her losing the house, the car, and access to the accounts. She moved in with her mother, which I'm sure was a real joy for both of them, but I wasn't done. Remember that slideshow from her birthday? A few people had filmed it on their phones. I never posted it myself. That could get messy. But somehow a copy made its way to one of her coworkers, and from there, well, let's just say her social circle got a lot smaller. By the time a month had passed, she'd stopped asking me for money. I figured it was over. Then one morning my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail.
When I checked it, it was her voice, quiet, almost broken. "Please, I'm in trouble. I just need to talk. You're the only one I can turn to." I listened to it twice, then I deleted it. She had made her choices, and now she was living with them. But I'll admit, I had one last surprise planned. I didn't answer her call, not because I didn't want to hear the desperation in her voice, but because some moments are better left for the right stage. 2 weeks passed. I heard from mutual friends that she was going through a rough patch and having trouble making ends meet. I kept my face neutral every time her name came up, giving nothing away. I wanted her to think I was completely indifferent, because nothing eats at someone like realizing they have no emotional leverage left. The truth? I was biding my time. See, when she first asked for that $20K, she didn't tell me what it was really for. But a little digging on my end told me the truth. It wasn't medical bills, it wasn't debts, it was for Terry. Apparently, Mr. Jim Romance had gotten himself into some financial mess, a failed business venture that was basically him trying to open a boutique personal training studio with no plan, no investors, and a lease that would bleed him dry. He'd convinced her to bail him out, promising they'd start fresh together once it was open. When he ghosted her after the birthday disaster, she was left holding the bag, and the bag was $20,000 short. Now she was desperate, not just for cash, but for a way to save face. That's when I decided to give her one final stage. I called her. My voice was calm, friendly even. "Let's meet. Neutral place. No yelling, no drama. I'll listen to whatever you have to say." She agreed instantly, and we set a time for Saturday afternoon at a local diner. I picked that place because it had big windows and a corner booth, perfect for what I had in mind. When she walked in, she actually looked hopeful. She'd done her hair, put on makeup, wore a dress I'd bought her years ago. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. We ordered coffee. She started talking first. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I'm trying to fix things. I need a fresh start." I let her talk. I didn't interrupt when she got teary-eyed, didn't react when she reached for my hand across the table. When she finally stopped, I leaned back and said, "I understand."
and I want to help you move forward." Her eyes lit up. "Really?" "Yes," I said. "That's why I invited a friend to join us." She looked confused. Then she saw him, Terry, walking through the door. Her face drained of color. He slid into the booth next to me, not her. "Hey, man," he said to me like we were old buddies. "Thanks for calling." She stammered, "What is this?" I smiled. "This is closure. For me." Turns out, Terry wasn't too hard to track down, and he was more than willing to talk when I told him I had evidence of his little side hustles that could ruin his chances of renting another commercial space. In exchange for my silence, he agreed to meet here and be completely honest. And oh, was he honest. Right there, in that crowded diner, he told her, in detail, how she'd been Plan B from the start, how he'd been seeing other women the entire time, how the business she was trying to save was already dead months before she knew. She sat frozen, her coffee untouched, her mouth opening and closing without words. When he finished, I pulled an envelope from my jacket and slid it across the table to her. "Here's your $20,000, I said. Her hands shook as she opened it, only to find a stack of fake bills with a note on top. "This is exactly as real as the marriage you gave me." She looked at me, fury mixing with humiliation. "You're a monster." I stood up. "No, I'm just finally done being your fool." Terry smirked and followed me out, leaving her sitting there with a pile of worthless paper and every eye in the diner on her. Now, here's the thing. I didn't walk away from that moment without making sure it would echo. The diner had cameras, and a friend of mine who works there made sure that little interaction, with all the audio intact, found its way online. It didn't take long for it to make the rounds. Her friends, her coworkers, even her mom saw it. And in a twist of poetic justice, her mom called me a few days later, begging me to stop ruining her daughter's life. I told her the same thing I told her daughter. You made your choices, live with them. Then I hung up. The last I heard, she'd moved 2 towns over, working a job she hated, still trying to claw her way out of debt. Terry? He vanished. Rumor has it he skipped out on rent and left the state. Me? I'm good. I sold the house, downsized to a place that's mine alone, and started traveling more. I've reconnected with old friends, picked up hobbies I'd dropped, and the best part, I've been sleeping like a rock. Sometimes people think revenge means getting even. But the truth is, the best revenge is making your absence the loudest thing in their life. And judging by those 76 missed calls I got last month from her number, I'd say she's still hearing it loud and clear.